Hello, my name is Luke Stearman, and I'm going to be doing an informative speech for the Willard Speech and Debate Tournament. And the title of my piece is Oops. Now, you've all probably heard of Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb. And according to Life Science, he spent hours upon hours upon hours developing over 3,000 different designs, as well as over 6,000 different filaments that he had to test until he finally found one that worked. Now, when we think of an inventor, we usually think of someone along those lines, just someone who spends lots of effort, does many tests, until finally, after maybe even years, they finally get what they were trying to invent. Now, if you'll take a look at this board, as you can see, there's pictures of many people on it. And they were all inventors. But they were all inventors in a very special way. And that is, they all invented something on accident. Some of them just discovered the method on accident. Some of them weren't even trying to invent anything, as well as a few who are trying to invent something completely different. Now, let's explore a few more of these inventions. We will look at some delicious foods, some medical discoveries, as well as a few everyday items. Now, let's dig into our first topic, accidental foods. According to the book Mistakes That Worked, our first inventor is George Crumb. And in the year 1853, he was working at his restaurant in Saratoga Springs, New York. One day, a customer complained about the fried potatoes. He said they were too thick and underfried. Now, George Crumb was in a bad mood, so he decided to cut the potatoes paper thin and fry them to a crisp, sure that the customer would hate them. But to his surprise, that wasn't the case. Soon they developed into one of America's favorite snacks, the potato chip. Now, if we move on to our next accidental food, this was invented in 1949 by Joe Greger. He was a baker and volunteer fireman, and it takes a long time to bake bread, and most people don't have time to bake it at home themselves. So he decided to find a way to make it a faster process, but he had little success. Then one day he was called to help put out a fire, so he quickly pulled the rolls he was baking out of the oven so they wouldn't burn. When he returned, he decided to just put them in just to see what would happen. The results were great. Joe Greger had just invented brown and serve rolls, which was a way for people who don't have a lot of time to just go to the bakery, buy some almost baked bread, and then finish it up real quick to have fresh bread fast. And for our final food, we go to Ruth Wakefield at the Toll House Inn in 1930. One day, she was baking chocolate cookies when she noticed that she had run out of chocolate baking powder, so she decided to just put in some pieces of chocolate into the dough, thinking they would be absorbed by the dough in the oven, making chocolate cookies. But to her surprise, that didn't happen. Ruth Wakefield had just invented the United States' favorite cookie, the chocolate chip cookie. And also, if you'll take a look at this picture of the chocolate chips, it says Toll House, which is because of the Toll House Inn where they were invented. Now, foods aren't the only things that were invented by accident. We will next closely examine two medical discoveries that have saved many lives. The first of these was invented by Wilhelm Roentgen. According to Columbia Surgery, in 1895, he was experimenting with cathode rays, and a heavy black paper covered his glass test tube. However, a faint green light still showed through. He was surprised, but did some more experiments and found that these X-rays, as he called them, went through many things, but left a darker image on his screen the denser the object was. He had, of course, invented the X-ray, and soon this invention was being used to save lives all over the place. Next, we have Alexander Fleming. According to American Chemical Society, in 1928, he was examining some petri dishes of Staphylococcus, a bacteria that caused several bad things to happen to you, including boils and sore throat. Then he noticed that on one of the dishes there was some mold, but around the mold there was none of the bacteria. He did some more studying and found that the so-called mold juice, as he called it, would stop or kill many kinds of bacteria. Alexander Fleming had just invented penicillin. Although it was many years before this medicine was perfected and made in large amounts, it has saved innumerable lives all over the world, as well as paving the way for modern antibiotics like these. Now, finally, we'll look around us at just some everyday items that were created on accident. First of these was invented by Percy Spencer in 1946. One day, according to Live Science, he was working on radars for World War II when he noticed that the microwaves from a radar had melted a candy bar in his pocket. He did some more experimenting, and soon the first microwave was born. It was 5.5 feet tall, weighed 750 pounds, and cost about $5,000. Although it has come a long way, as we can see, it has been a very useful item and has saved a lot of time making food, as we can see today. Now next, moving on, according to Post-it, our next inventor is Arthur Fry and Spencer Silver. In 1968, Spencer Silver was working on a super strong glue for the 3M company, but on accident, he made a super weak one. Meanwhile, Arthur Fry needed a bookmark that would stick in his hymnal, but not hurt the pages. Can you guess where this is going? Well, if you guess Post-it notes, you'd be correct. Soon, they came together and developed the Post-it note, which uses have spread far beyond simple bookmarks, as we can see today. And for our final everyday item, this one's actually very common, and according to historyofglass.com, it was invented in 1909 by Willard Benedictus. Now, Willard was a scientist, and one day, as he worked, he accidentally dropped a flask on the floor. But instead of shattering into sharp pieces all over the place, it cracked all over but stayed in roughly the same shape. This was because the glass flask had contained cellulose nitrate, which bonded the inside of the glass with a thin film. Now you can see an example of this here in this picture. Now, of course, the invention is safety glass, and as you can see, it's cracked, but it's still in the shape of a windshield and not in sharp pieces all over the place. Pretty soon, this invention was being used and has saved many lives by reducing the sharpness and deadliness of broken glass, as well as just its destructive power. And it's been used in many items, such as goggles and windows, cars, stuff like that. And also an interesting fact about it is it also increases the ability of glass to withstand heat. So, in conclusion, as we can see, not everything around us is the result of careful planning. A delicious food, an everyday item, or a life-saving medicine can spring into existence when we least expect it or in a place unlooked for. In the words of Thomas Edison, just because something doesn't do what you planned it to do doesn't mean it's useless. So we can be thankful to all the people who took that advice and didn't throw their mistakes away. And be on the lookout, because someday you may make an accidental invention of your own.